Hey, welcome back. The Ganyu Go have been released on the NA server, so today we're going to talk about some math, some build, and finally some thoughts. Let's get started. As always, we start with their skill first. Ganyu's level 2 charge shot have a AoE follow-up to it, as you can see here. And of course, naturally aim shot mean that you can miss, which you can see in this case it flew over just a little bit by his head. But it still hit the wall at the end there and still blew up for the follow-up AoE damage. Finally, the 2-part crit independently. Here you can see the aim shot hit the head, which is a guaranteed critical, but the follow-up AoE damage here did not crit, represented by the 4000 number. Note that both parts of the arrow can melt individually. As you can see here, the second part of the arrow damage went up from 4000 to 6000, so the melt did apply even though the melt text did not appear on the screen. There are some couple other properties that were tested. For example, both part of the arrow is considered a charge shot, which mostly affects stuff like the Wanderer set or the Amos bow. Anyway, with those in mind, once again I went to modify my program and generated the following. So let's take a moment and digest this graph. Starting off with the x-axis going toward the right side, this is the increase in overall artifact quality. Pretty much measured by the number of good substat line that you get. And of course for our y-axis, we have our damage. Starting off with the very top at this orange line, this is using the Wander 4 piece and Melt. And not surprisingly, this results in the highest damage because Melt is exponential damage. Followed by this green line, which is again using the Wander 4 piece, but this time only melting half the time. And then moving on to the 2 line up to that, which is the blue and purple line. These are respectively using the Cryo 4 set, and for the blue line it's attacking a frozen enemy, and for the purple line it's attacking a enemy only affected by Cryo, meaning that you lose 20% crit rate. Note that in both of these cases we did factor in the 2 Cryo resonance, which gain an additional 15% critical rate. And as you can see, the Wander 4 pretty much outdamaged the Cryo build, even if you only melt half the time. Note that this is true regardless of your weapon choice, whether it be Amos or a Black Cliff or a Protect Present. While this might not be the exact number, the graph pretty much follow a similar format. Now, of course, those numbers were only counting her charge shot, which of course is like her signature kit move. But a lot of you must be wondering, is that also true when you factor in Ganyu's elemental burst as well? Ganyu elemental bursts kind of work interestingly in the sense that the icicle drop are pseudo random. Here you can see that this healer true get hit by a icicle here, and approximately after like 1.5 to 1.6 seconds he get hit by another icicle. And you can see again here he get hit by another icicle after about like 1.5 seconds ish. And it's pretty much true for single target or even having only 2 target. The interval seems to be around 1.4 to 1.8 seconds ish. Now it is actually possible for the icicle to hit a bit faster than that depending on your RNG. Pay attention to the left here. Here you can see that the icicle hit the fat guy back to back. Although the icicle did not directly target the fat guy because of his size and because of the RNG is actually what's able to hit him back to back. And if your target was to grip up like this, it is also possible for the icicle to keep on hitting them. With that in mind, I factor in the Ganyu elemental burst into the calculation and I see what's up. Here the axis is the same as the previous graph. Starting with the top green line, actually this is the Wander 4 set plus using Ganyu elemental burst and only melting half the time. And you might be curious that why melting all the time is not better than only melting half the time. And the reason is because we did not factor in Ganyu elemental burst in the melting all the time scenario. Ganyu elemental burst apply Cryo as well, and to be able to melt all the time is kind of unrealistic, but if you could, then yes, the orange line would be above the green line. However, coming up tightly, we have the Cryo 4 set freeze tomb along with Ganyu elemental burst. It's not really a huge surprise that Ganyu is able to catch up after factoring her elemental burst, since her elemental burst can greatly benefit from the 4-set Blizzard set as well. So while 4 Blizzard set Ganyu might not be exactly as good as the 4 Wanderer set Melt Ganyu, I honestly would say it's pretty close. Now, you might actually have heard something like Amos is the best bow for Ganyu, insane weapon, 6-star weapon for Ganyu. And that is definitely true, especially if you do something like the Wanderer build, which primary focus is to hit Melt Charge Shot. As you can see represented by the very top green line and the very bottom red line, this is the Wanderer build comparison between Amos and Harp that I did. And you can see that Amos is significantly better than Harp. But for the freeze build, yes, the Amos is still better, but the Harp is not lagging behind either. As you can see by the orange line and the blue line, they are actually pretty close. This is because the Harp can benefit the elemental burst of Ganyu as well, which is a significant portion of her damage in the freeze build. Unfortunately, reality is not as easy as it seems. For Melt Ganyu, currently the only suitable support is Jiangling, who have a 80 energy cost on her elemental burst, so it's gonna definitely be hard to consistently keep it up. And of course, Hydro support have their own respective problem as well. Mona have a large downtime on her elemental skill. Xingqiu, while have great uptime, it's very difficult for Xingqiu to consistently proc water on multiple targets. Oh, and then of course we have either Child or Barbara, who both respectively have their own problem. With those in mind, personally I'll recommend going the freeze build over the melt build, mostly because the Blizzard set is much more easy to acquire and farm than the Wanderer set, and the freeze is also more consistent. So moving on to the build recommendation, as we have mentioned, the recommended build is going to be 4 Blizzard set, and of course we have standard crit damage on our helmet, cryo damage on our goblet, attack on Hourglass. And for substat, once again look for attack percent, critical rate, or critical damage. Do not build Elemental Mastery. Instead, if you have to look for a 4th stat, I heavily recommend Energy Recharge to make sure that your Elemental Burst can consistently be up all the time. Moving on to the 5-star weapon option, as you can see before, the Harps and the Amos are really close. Personally, I recommend the Harps because I think it's more flexible. Moving on to the 4-star option, the Black Cliff does outperform the prototype by a slight amount if you can properly keep the passive up. However, I'd still recommend the prototype being easier to both acquire as well as easier to manage, since all you have to do is hit one weak spot every 10 seconds. And then for the team composition, for the second ice slot, I recommend Diona over Chi-Chi. Simply, Diona is able to provide more energy for Ganyu to keep her elemental burst up. Also, the shield is really nice just in case you do take damage during your aim shot, you have less chance of being interrupted. Sorry Chi-Chi, even though you're a Ganyu friend. And for the Hydro slot, I think either Xingqiu or Mona are gonna be the better one, although I have heard huge success from people who have been running Chayo as well. I think Barbara is the least favorable one because it requires strictly to be in shotgun range, but it can do as well. And of course your last slot is a flex slot, so anything like Fenty or Bennett, or if you want, Zhongli. And now that we have covered the build, let's talk about some final thought, which might be why you're here in case you don't have Ganyu and you're wondering if you should be rolling Ganyu. Ganyu have very high theoretical DPS, but the problem, it comes down to practical issues that Ganyu might have. The first problem is, of course, Ganyu is currently the highest mechanical skill required character. Between missing your aim shot to your aim shot being interrupted due to taking damage, or just being forced to cancel out of your aim shot because you have to dash to avoid attack, in all of this scenario above, your DPS went from a lot to absolutely 0. And a lot of the time, I find myself, because I'm so focused on trying to hit that aim shot, on aiming, on positioning, I find myself forget to cast some elemental skill or even elemental burst. So cooldown management is definitely a huge part to Ganyu as well. In comparison to something like my Deluxe Xingqiu, where all I have to do is like swing my sword, press my skill here and there, and well, if I get interrupted or if I have to dash out of my attack, all I lose is one attack and I can just continue on to my next attack as if nothing has happened. Here, I also want you to pay attention to Xingqiu's elemental burst, those water sword, and see how they attack every time I swing with my Diluc. In comparison to Ganyu, yes, I can do normal attack between my charge attack, but notice how much less Xingqiu sword I'm getting, and I'm missing a lot of the damage which is gonna be provided by Xingqiu here. And this is the same for something like C6 Visual or some other support. In another word, Ganyu utilizes support currently very poorly. However, in compensation to those, Ganyu is able to do very high damage. In fact, she's the theoretically highest damage character, higher than Diluc. The problem comes from, can you practically do those damage as well? And in majority of the cases, probably not, but you'll be able to do a good chunk of it. Personally, I would not say she's better than Diluc, however, I would say she's the same tier as Klee, who is currently rated the second best DPS in the game, or potentially even better than Klee. If you're a person who enjoyed using charge shot or you don't mind using charge aim shot at all, or if you're a high mechanical skill player looking to spice up your game a little bit, then I can very safely say that Ganyu is a really good pull. Ganyu is a very versatile character in the sense that she does a lot of things really well. Even when she's played as a sub DPS, she's still really good. However, I'm not really sure if that's a good enough reason to pull her. But if you're not someone who enjoys aim shot, I suggest you wait a couple more days to see if she is able to offer other stuff as well. I know I didn't cover the sub DPS portion or like the melts build in this video, but there's just way too much to cover. Ganyu just does so many different things, and this video is starting to get very long, so I just wanted to cut it here. So as we explore more about Ganyu, I'll probably have to make another video on that, unfortunately. So make sure you don't miss it, be sure to subscribe, like, comment on this video, and I'll see you guys next time.